They say that the gold of men is ephemeral, but the gold of wisdom ... that never loses its shine. I learned this too late. For years, I roamed the deserts of the East in search of answers, not out of ambition, but out of desperation. I saw kings falling to ruin, and beggars who somehow attracted abundance with a serenity I never understood. It was then that I heard of the Brotherhood of the Seven, a group of masters who, for millennia, had guarded the secrets of true prosperity, those found not in books, but in symbols, rituals, and silences. It was in the ancient temple of Heptid, carved into the rock and bathed in desert light, that I encountered what would change my life. 7 doors, 7 symbols, 7 trials. Each of them revealed a principle not just about wealth, but about the invisible power that moves men's destinies. It wasn't about coins, nor about political power. It was about vibration, sacrifice, honor, purposing, spiritual wisdom. These secrets were so powerful that they were hidden from the impure. It was said that whoever used them without conscience would be consumed by their own desire. But whoever mastered them ... would create realities. I studied them, one by one, under the guidance of the temple guardians. And today, after years of silence, I decided to reveal them, not to the curious, but to those who are ready. For true prosperity is not a gift from the gods, it's an ancient science. And only those who understand its origin can awaken its power. The first door opened with a sound I will never forget, a deep echo, as if the earth itself were breathing. Ahead of me was a circular room lit by torches. In the center, a golden statue held a scale in one hand and, in the other, a scroll sealed with red wax. Then the guardian, a man with a white beard and eyes as calm as the desert, approached and said, "The first secret of prosperity is not what you seek to possess, but what you learn to balance." For a long time, I didn't understand. I thought prosperity was the result of accumulation of gold, land, power. But that old man taught me that gold is merely a reflection of what is already ordered within us. He spoke of an ancient law: nothing can remain where balance does not dwell. It was there that I realized the mistake most men make. They want to receive without knowing how to give. They want to dominate without serving. They want to reap without sowing. The guardian made me kneel before the scales and asked me to place, on one side, a handful of sand representing my desires and, on the other, a stone, representing my fears. The scales oscillated, never finding rest. He then said, "Prosperity escapes imbalance. Where there is excess desire, there is a lack of awareness. Where there is fear, there is blockage. The secret is the point of balance, the place where man understands that he is the channel, not the owner, of wealth." That night, I understood that the gold of the world is attracted not by force, but by harmony. And that the first step to becoming prosperous is to adjust the inner scale, the one that measures our intentions, our habits, and our energy. As I left the room, I noticed that the scroll the statue had been holding was now open. Engraved on it in ancient script was, "Wealth flows to the righteous, and the righteous is he who knows the measure of his own heart." I walked away silently, knowing something within me had changed. And as the torches died behind me, the second door began to move, slowly, revealing a new secret, one that would test not my balance, but my faith. The second door opened with a warm breath, as if the temple itself exuded life. Torchlight flickered on the symbol-covered walls, and a faint scent of incense hung in the air, a mixture of myrrh and ancient resin. I entered slowly, feeling something watching me. In the center of the new chamber, there was only a blue flame burning over a stone bowl, no guardian in sight this time, no voices. No sound, other than my heart pounding in my chest. The flame seemed to breathe. As I approached, it moved as if acknowledging my presence. Then I heard, inside my own mind, a voice that was not my own: "He who doubts the invisible will never touch the visible." I paused, trying to comprehend what it meant. That was when I realized that was the second secret. Not a secret learned with words, but with surrender. The flame represented faith. Not blind faith in distant gods, but living faith in the power that lives within us. The ancients called it Tankra, the creative breath, the spark that transforms thought into matter. I touched the stone surrounding the flame, and it was warm. The heat seemed to pulse through my hands, rising up my arms to my heart. And I understood, everything that exists was born of an unshakable belief. No structure can be built without first existing in someone's mind. No wealth manifests without someone first seeing it within themselves with absolute certainty. As I watched, the flame changed color from blue to gold, and a light breeze swept through the room. It was as if the temple responded to my understanding. And then I heard the voice again. Faith is the language of the gods. Whoever speaks it commands the invisible. I closed my eyes. I saw images of ancient kings building palaces in the middle of the desert, of navigators following the sun, never knowing if they would find land. None of them had any guarantees, only conviction. And that was what made them prosperous, the ability to believe before seeing. When I opened my eyes, the flame had disappeared. On the ground, only a small symbol engraved in gold remained, a circle intersected by a vertical line, the union of heaven and earth. Faith was that line, the connecting point between what is dreamed and what is lived. As I walked out of the chamber, a feeling washed over me. It wasn't euphoria, it was power. The second door closed behind me, and before me, another began to move, carved with human figures holding tools, as if the next secret would teach me how to turn faith into action. The third door revealed a chamber very different from the previous ones. The air was denser, and the distant sound of hammers echoed off the walls, as if invisible blacksmiths were working in some hidden corner of the temple. Lit torches cast shadows that seemed to move on their own, shaping human figures in constant creation. In the center of the room stood a massive black stone anvil, upon which rested a golden hammer. The guardian this time was not an old man, but a woman. She wore red robes, and her eyes glowed like embers. She didn't say anything at first, she just watched me silently as I tried to understand what this place represented. Then, in a firm voice, she spoke. Faith creates the fire, but only work keeps it burning. Those words cut me like a blade. I had just learned about the invisible power of belief, but then I realized that it alone was not enough. The temple showed me the natural sequence of secrets, first balance, then faith, and now, action. The woman pointed to the hammer and ordered me to hold it. Its weight was absurd, almost impossible to lift. Forge your desire, she said. I looked around, confused, and realized that before me was a rough, hard, shapeless stone. I understood that it represented my own life, full of potential, but without direction. With effort, I lifted the hammer and struck. The sound echoed through the temple, and golden sparks flew into the air. With each blow, I felt the weight of doubt lift, and something inside me strengthen. She came closer and said, the ancients knew that prosperity arises from the union of the invisible and the visible. Dreaming is divine, but action is the sacred right that transforms thought into matter. No god delivers gold to empty hands, they honor those who build. I continued to strike the stone until, little by little, it began to take shape, a small statue, simple but clear. It was the image of a man holding a sun in his hands. I then understood that the third secret was that of sacred work, the power to act with purpose, to transform every gesture into a conscious ritual. It's not about working out of necessity, but out of reverence, like someone who shapes their own destiny with every move. When I finished, the woman smiled and blew on the statue. It dissolved into golden dust, which rose into the air and disappeared. Now you know, she said. The man who works without a soul is a servant of time. But he who works with purpose ... becomes a creator. The camera began to dissolve into light, and before I knew it, I was standing in front of a new door. This one, unlike the others, was made of mirrors. And I knew the next secret would not show me the world, but myself. When the fourth door opened, I felt a chill run down my spine. The room was so silent, almost suffocating. The walls were entirely covered in antique mirrors, stained by time. At first glance, it seemed like an infinite chamber, reflections within reflections, multiplying my image to the horizon. There were no torches, no guardians, no symbols, just me ... and what I saw. I took a few steps forward, and each reflection seemed to move subtly differently. One stared back at me with fear, another with arrogance, another with despair. It was as if each mirror showed a version of myself shaped by thoughts and emotions I had created. It was then that a voice echoed, but this time, from inside my mind, gold follows the reflection of what man believes himself to be. The fourth secret is in the mirror. Those words hit me like a blow. I'd always believed that prosperity came from outside, from opportunities, from connections, from luck. But there, the temple showed me the truth that the ancients so zealously guarded. External reality is just a reflection of the internal one. I looked into one mirror and saw my younger self, insecure, hungry for recognition. Then another showed me, tired, frustrated, beset by loss. I understood, then, that every thought I had entertained throughout my life had become matter. The temple didn't judge me, it just mirrored me. The voice spoke again. Man is the alchemist of the invisible. If he thinks of scarcity, he becomes it. If he thinks of abundance, he becomes a magnet for what he desires. But few understand that it's not about repeating words, but about feeling what is true. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. For the first time, I felt gratitude not for what I had, but for being there, alive, with the chance to rebuild myself. When I opened them again, the reflections had changed. Now I saw only one image, myself, serene, firm, centered. The wall before me began to glow, and slowly the mirrors merged into one, revealing an inscription engraved in gold: "Know yourself. For whoever masters the mind, masters gold, time, and destiny." At that moment, I understood the fourth secret: prosperity begins in the invisible. Gold is not attracted by need, but by identity. As I walked through the chamber, I noticed that the reflected light formed a corridor that led to the next door, made of ancient wood and covered in inscriptions about harvest, trees, and fruits. The temple now wanted to teach me about the natural cycle of abundance, the secret that unites giving and receiving, seed and harvest. The fifth door opened with a deep creak, and a scent of wet earth filled the air. Unlike the previous chambers, this one was alive. The ceiling was covered in roots that descended to the floor, forming webs that seemed to pulse with their own energy. Small beams of light filtered through cracks in the stone, illuminating a golden tree growing in the center of the room. Their fruits shone like jewels, and yet, something about them seemed sad, incomplete. I approached it reverently and noticed that its roots were trapped, intertwined with each other, preventing the tree from breathing. I touched one of them and felt a strange pain, as if that trapped life were also mine. Then I heard the soft sound of a distant flute. From it emerged a woman dressed in green, with eyes that reflected time itself. She looked at me and said, "Prosperity is a river. When man tries to keep it, it rots. When he lets it flow, it multiplies." I remained silent, absorbing those words. She pointed to the tree and continued, "This is the symbol of the fifth secret. It is the tree of flow. Everything it receives, it must give back. The sun gives it light, and it returns shade. The earth gives it shelter, and it returns fruit. So it is with man. When he retains what he receives, he breaks the cycle of abundance." I picked up one of the golden fruits and held it in my hands. It was heavy, hot, as if it contained pure energy. She asked me to place it on the ground, and I did. Immediately, the earth shifted, and new roots began to grow around it. The tree breathed, the leaves trembled. The glow intensified. "The ancients knew that giving is not losing," she said. "It is multiplying. Energy needs to circulate. Gold, love, knowledge. Everything that stagnates dies. Everything that is shared flourishes." At that moment, I understood the fifth secret. True prosperity is not in possessing, but in allowing the flow. The kings who donated part of their wealth to the temples did not do so out of piety, but out of wisdom. They knew that gold needed to move like blood in the body. The woman touched my shoulder and added, "Give, and you will be one with the river. Withhold, and you will become stone." As she disappeared, the tree began to turn into light, and the roots came loose, free. A golden beam illuminated a new passage, where the sound of the wind seemed to sing like ancient voices. I walked down that hallway feeling something new, a lightness. But I soon realized that the next door would not be one of peace. The air grew heavy, and a dry heat took over. The sixth camera awaited me, and in it, the most challenging secret of all, the power of sacrifice and renunciation. The corridor narrowed as I progressed, and the air became increasingly hot, almost impossible to breathe. When I reached the sixth door, I realized it was made entirely of iron and marked with symbols of fire. I touched it and felt my skin burn. There was no doubt the next secret would require something I hadn't yet learned to surrender. When the door opened, a wave of heat enveloped me. The floor was glowing stone, the ceiling a dome open to the red sky. In the center, a pyre burned, and around it, nothing, only the sound of fire consuming the air. Suddenly, a voice echoed throughout the chamber, deep, as if coming from the earth itself. He who desires everything loses. He who learns to lose becomes master of the world. I knew it. It was the sixth secret. Fire represented the proof of detachment, the sacrifice that the ancients said was the purest of rituals. No lasting wealth was born without first giving. I looked around and saw 7 small stone columns. On each of them, an object materialized before me: a jewel, a crown, a sword, a cup, a book, a coin, and a mirror. Each symbol represented something I had sought in life: power, status, wisdom, pleasure, control, recognition. And vanity, the voice returned: choose what still dominates you, and deliver it to the fire. The weight of choice fell upon me like a blow. I hesitated, each object shone like a temptation. Finally, I approached the mirror. I knew. The real sacrifice was not losing the gold, but the ego. I held up the mirror and saw my own face, the reflection of all the fears and vanities that had driven me there. With a last breath, I threw it into the flame. The fire roared. The light spread, illuminating the entire temple. For a moment, I thought I was going to die, but something inside me dissolved. It was as if an invisible chain had broken. The fear ... is gone. The voice spoke one last time. The ancients knew. Nothing is truly yours until you are willing to let it go. Abundance is the reward of the free. As the flame died down, the chamber transformed. The heat gave way to a gentle breeze, and the ground, once smoldering, was now covered in dried flowers that flared to life as the wind touched them. Ahead, a new door formed, translucent, as if made of crystal. I felt that she would take me beyond the physical trials, to something higher. The temple seemed to breathe with me. It was time to learn the 7th secret, that of divine connection, the power to align with Source, where all gold, every idea, and every destiny is created. I stepped through the crystal door, and immediately a profound silence enveloped me, not an empty silence, but a living silence, as if every particle of air carried an ancient presence. The light there came not from torches, nor from fire. It emanated from the walls themselves, soft and pulsating like a heartbeat in tune with my own. In the center of the chamber stood a white stone altar. Upon it, no inscription, no symbol, just a circle of light floating in the air. It was serene, yet intense. I stood still, mesmerized, until an indescribable sensation began to course through me, not fear, nor fascination, but a profound reverence, as if I were standing before the very source of life. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw the old guardian from the first room, the one with the scales, walking slowly toward me. He looked younger now, or perhaps I was seeing him differently. He stopped beside me and said, "You have reached the ultimate secret, the one few understand because they try to grasp it with their minds. It can only be felt." He reached out and pointed to the circle of light. "Everything that exists is born from this energy. The ancients called it Rel, the golden consciousness. It is from this that gold, faith, balance, the power of action, reflection, and flow. But to access it, men must silence the self that separates. Prosperity is unity, is remembering that you are never alone." I approached the altar. The light pulsed brighter, and an inner voice, not from the temple, but from myself, began to speak. "Everything you seek is already yours. The gold you seek is the energy that inhabits you. You are the channel, not the vessel." I closed my eyes, and in that instant, I felt an expansion. There was no longer me, and the world just a single force, vibrating. I saw images of everything that had ever been created: ancient cities, oceans, stars, seeds, words. Everything interconnected, moving in unison. And then I understood. Prosperity is communion with the whole. When man acts in tune with this energy, everything he touches flourishes. The old guardian smiled and placed his hand on my chest. "Now you know, the 7 secrets are not steps, but circles. They feed off each other. When balance, faith, action, self-knowledge, flow, detachment, and connection come together, gold ceases to be matter and becomes light. The room began to dissolve into brightness. The last thing I heard before everything disappeared was his voice whispering, "The temple is within you." And prosperity, too. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the desert. I was standing before the sunrise, my hands empty, but my heart full of a wealth no coin could measure. And that's when I understood, the temple was never a place, it was an awakening. The sun rose over the dunes, and I walked in silence. Behind me, the temple no longer existed, or perhaps it had never existed outside my consciousness. The wind blew lightly, as if the desert itself blessed me for having seen what so many had sought in vain. I carried no gold, no jewels, no scrolls, but within me, something burned, a new, ancient, and eternal certainty. The 7 secrets weren't mysteries guarded by priests or kings. They were laws that had always been before us, all hidden, not because they were complex, but because they were too simple for the distracted eye. Balance, faith, action, self-knowledge, flow, detachment, and connection. Each was a key. Together, they opened the same door, that of consciousness. I understood that prosperity is not a blessing granted, it is a sacred frequency. It manifests itself when man stops fighting life and begins to dance with it. When you don't seek to dominate time, but to flow with the rhythm of the universe. When you no longer ask to have, but become the very channel through which having happens. The ancients called this the inner gold, the invisible glow that transforms the common man into a creator. And that's why I tell you this story, because perhaps you, like me, have sought answers in books, in teachers, in promises. But everything you seek already lives within you, waiting only for silence to reveal it. So, before you go, close your eyes, feel what the temple taught me. You are balance, faith, action, and flow. You are the very spark of creation. Everything that gold represents already pulses in your chest. If this truth touched something inside you, don't let it die. Start acting with purpose, share what you know. Be grateful for what you have. And watch the world will respond, because the universe bows before those who live in harmony with it. The secrets of prosperity have not been lost. They were just waiting for someone to finally remember. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, because here we rediscover the wisdom that time has tried to hide. Until the next episode.